This is an island surrounded by water, big water, ocean water. Trust me, I'm like a smart person. I'm very consistent. I'm a very stable genius. I had the best words. Tolerated. I know words. Mike Pounds. I hope they now go and take a look at the oranges of the investigation. But there's no better word than stupid. Anonymous, really anonymous. I'm very highly educated. One of the wettest we've ever seen from the standpoint of water. Had the best words. God bless the United States.
Now witness the firepower of this fully armed and operational battle station.
Nancy Pelosi's gazpacho police.
Around the nation, Waldorf Nation. What's up, everybody? It's Wednesday! You know what time it is? Time for another fantastic show. We have Truth Social versus a cow. It's one of the best stories. Fun. We got QAnon versus Flat Earth. It's also good. We have conservatives. Actually a serious story of how conservatives are gaming Facebook against Facebook's own rules. Gee, I wonder if they're going to get punished for it. Good question. We have the Democrats going into a midterm disaster. But don't worry, folks. They have a plan. I think. Yay. And then, if we got time for it, of course, I'm going to talk about the BLM organizer that was tragically killed by a fan of Andy No, right-winger in Portland. So just, bad news on that one as well. But hey, we've got some fun stuff. We got some disastrous stuff. We got stuff. So let's go. I was thinking about making a joke about getting stuff, but no, we're not going to go there. All right. Not good. All right. So, that said, let's dive in with fun. Don't have a cow, man. I know. Former President Donald Trump's new free speech app, Truth Social, has now made its first very high-profile ban, or at least they consider it to be high enough profile to ban, and it would be a fictional cow. Yes, according to reports I'm reading here from CNET, former U.S. President Donald Trump's recently launched app Truth Social has reportedly banned a user for trying to make an account called Devin Nunes's Cow. Yes, Devin Nunes's Cow. That is despite Trump positioning the social network as a bulwark against censorship. Hey, we're believing free speech here. All speech is welcome unless you're a cow. No cows allowed, especially ones that make fun of Devin Nunes. Fun. Now, Devin Nunes, of course, is running Truth Social, so you can kind of draw a line here between like, oh, right, Devin Nunes is cow, and Devin Nunes, he don't like that. Now, the account's handle referred to Trump Media and Technology Group CEO and former U.S. Representative Devin Nunes. Web developer and internet personality Matt Ortega had tweeted on Tuesday that after he tried to make the account on Truth Social, he received an email from the platform saying that the account was permanently banned. Couldn't even get to the account creation. This was pre-banned. This was like, oh, by the way, if you try to make a cow, well, we're going to have a cow and we're going to butcher it, literally, before it even gets out of the gate. Gone. Sorry, cow, not going to happen. In fact, Ortega told Business Insider, quote, I was never able to log in, leaving me to believe that the account was banned simply for the username that mocking the media company's CEO with a well-known meme. It's memes. We've got memes, the realist memes. The Trump Media and Technology Group's terms of service do not allow people to tarnish, disparage, or otherwise harm, in our opinion, us and or the site. But it's a parody account. Now, funny enough, True Social allows parody accounts. In fact, I'm pretty sure that somewhere out there, some right-winger is making a parody account of Joe Biden, which is fine. I don't have a problem with that. Twitter wouldn't even have a problem with that. In fact, there are parody accounts of politicians all over. But yet on True Social, if you try to make a parody account of Devin Nunes and or his cow, well, that's too much. Too much. We're going to have to destroy, obliterate your free speech. I'm guessing that he's just a bit salty about this. Like, imagine having the conversation with the developers to make sure, hey, look, we say we're free speech, right? But there is one account that we definitely need to ban. Okay, you need to write this into the code that you cannot even create Devin Nunes cow or Devin's cow or anything like that. Now, of course, those of you familiar with Devin Nunes and the cow saga, they've had a beef for some time. And so, look, he spent years in court trying to not only get this fake cow banned off Twitter, and even, of course, to try to dox the owner. And then, not only that, when that was unsuccessful, tried to sue Twitter for saying, how dare you mock me? This is the man who was running a so-called free speech social media site. My free speech, I gotta have my free speech, but you can't have your free speech. Have you ever seen anything more sad? I haven't. I mean, this shows how incredibly fragile and anti-free speech they actually are. Oh my God, I can't believe a cow is making fun of me. A fake cow. How dare you? Why would you do such a thing? Again, the irony, this proves that that they are, of course, they don't actually care about free speech. They go after Twitter for doing the exact same thing that they do. Claim, oh my God, you got the censorship. Why are they censoring conservative voices? How dare you? And yet they go and censor voices. In this case, fake cows. It's ridiculous. Now, here's the thing. Every site has a terms of service. Of course, right? I don't even have a problem with them having a terms of service, but you can't call yourself a unmitigated free speech platform if you have all these rules that literally ban people from having free speech. I mean, it seems like a bit of a bait and switch here. Seems like a bit of a marketing problem. You know? Where's the beef? Oh, apparently you don't have any. You're not a free speech site. It's like a burger place selling just the bun. Where's the meat? You don't have any. You don't have any. It's gone. It never was there in the first place. Now, let me show you some more examples too. And I've told you, I think it was another site here. It was Getter. That's right. That's the Jason Miller so-called free speech site that immediately banned Nick Fuentes. Nick Fuentes is white nationalist, terrible person altogether, and a leader of what they call the Groyper Army. Immediately banned off Getter. Why? Because, well, he violated the terms of service, which again, these so-called free speech sites have. That goes against their entire marketing of being free speech and not censoring people's voices. Well, if you're not going to censor anybody, then you would be fine with the groypers saying these horrible things. Oh, but that looks bad for your site. Nobody wants to go there. Nobody wants to be around those horrible, horrible people. And so you got to draw a line somewhere. And so now, in this new example here for Truth Social, they also banned, they didn't ban him, but they censored Stu Peters. Who's Stu Peters? Well, he's a right-wing personality, and what happened is that he says that they have censored his post for calling for the execution of people responsible for COVID-19 vaccines. Not the COVID vaccine, not COVID-19, but the vaccine in general. You realize that the Trump administration is partly responsible for the rollout of the vaccine. I say partly because they provided a lot of funding. They did Operation Warp Speed. And of course, provided tons of incentive for these companies to go and do a very quick rollout of the vaccine. And, all these incentives created this competition between some of the companies, and then you ended up having a gigantic rollout of the different COVID-19 vaccines, right? And that's why I say they're partly responsible, but I think more responsible is the actual scientists that did the real work. Nonetheless, this guy says, if you're responsible for the COVID-19 vaccine, you should be executed. Well, Trump takes responsibility for that. Well, are you calling for Trump? Well, obviously they've got to be banned, or I'm sorry, not banned. I keep saying the word banned, but censored on Truth Social, censored his posts. And Peters wrote on Telegram, quote, "I'm already being censored on Truth Social." But you know what they actually have to do? Now, this was labeled on Truth Social, that calling for the execution, sensitive content. Nothing more than what Facebook actually does when they have a fact check of, like, for example, anti-vax content. They say, oh, that's not true. And then you click it, and then, you can still access it. Same thing on Truth Social, but that's the very thing, understand the hypocrisy. It's the very thing that they complain about, or the conservatives complain about every single time there's a quote-unquote fact check on Facebook. I can't believe you're censoring my posts. Well, Truth Social doing the exact same thing. Not only that, but there's some weird rules on some of these so-called free speech sites as well. I talked about how Mike Lindell's site, Frank Speech, doesn't let you say swear words. But even more ludicrous is that apparently on Truth Social, you can be banned for using excessive capitalization. Yes, excessive capitalization. Apparently, they do not believe that caps lock is cruise control for cool. My final point here is, look, this is just part of the reason that this site is not going to last at all. Again, all these websites, they have to have a terms of service. And so as a result of that, you're going to have to ban some of the more toxic elements of their user base. Now, if you're already catering to the extreme far right, well then, that's literally the people that are the ones coming over to use your service in the first place. The only people that really want to join these right-wing sites are the toxic base that are too toxic for Twitter. Certainly nobody on the left is going to go join Truth Social. And even mainstream conservatives who aren't insane, yes, they do exist, they're not going to have much reason to abandon Twitter. And of course, that means it's going to turn into an echo chamber. That's it. An echo chamber for the far right, the extreme right. And of course, what happens? Well, they're either going to get super bored because there's nobody to bully, or they're going to fight amongst themselves. Most likely, they're just going to go and try to get back on Twitter so that they can find libs to own. And that's what it is. They can't survive in a place where it's just them. It's kind of like a desert. Not a lot of people there. Some tumbleweeds tumbling around, that kind of thing. No, they want to come back to where everybody else is. So number one, they can be heard. And number two, they can own the libs, which is really basically their identity at this point. How are their elderly truthers going to see their truths without caps lock on? Caps lock is cruise control for cool. Fun. All right, let's move on. Followers of QAnon have a message for the flat earthers. Get your insane conspiracy theories out of our movement. Well, that's interesting. I mean, you have adherents of QAnon who believe in a satanic pedophile cult that has infiltrated Hollywood and the Democratic Party specifically, and that Trump was elected to put them in jail, which did not happen, and that somehow now JFK Jr. will rise from the dead and run a presidential campaign in 2024 with Donald Trump. You have that group that believes that the people who think that the earth is flat are too crazy for them. Wow. Fascinating. So now where do I get this? Well, this comes from Kelly Weil and her new book. And so what she did is that she embedded herself with the Flat Earther group, right? And so now she's going to talk about her experience on the podcast Fever Dream, right? So she's going to go into what they actually have in common. And so I'm going to have you listen to a part of that, and then I'm going to give my opinion. Take a look.
One thing that I learned in the reporting of this book is that a lot of flat earthers come to the movement and stay in the movement because as they become more and more engaged, they push people away in their real lives. People say, flat earth, that's kind of weird. Let's talk about football or something like that. And sometimes people talk about they're being persecuted for their beliefs, but I came across some anecdotes in the writing of this book that showed just how strange people can act in the thrall of these theories.
All right, so look, that's something that they do have in common, these two conspiracies. It envelops their entire life. They get sucked into it, they push people away, and, you know, it causes all these divisions within their families. And again, we've seen this in QAnon, and apparently she sees it in Flat Earth. So now, I also want to read this segment from it. She said, I thought Flat Earth was an interesting parable about how people can believe anything. There are other conspiracy theories that are more reality adjacent, and it's easy to walk through the path of how somebody got to the conclusion based on their own political beliefs. But said, Flat Earth seems so out there that I wanted to understand it better. Those in modern political conspiracies are a lot like the Flat Earth movement in that there are people who feel at odds with the reality that they live in, and they want to be able to blame a person or group for persecuting them. So in a lot of ways, Flat Earth is almost interchangeable with a lot of conspiracy theories that we deal with every day at work. So all of that here is excellent realization that these conspiracy theories, and I talked about conspiracy theories all the time on the show, they really appeal to people who don't like reality. I mean, that's really what they all have in common. They despise the reality. Now, of course, that's why somebody would rather choose to believe in a fictional world where it is Satan that is keeping your wages low somehow, and not the politicians you continue to elect that serve big business. Weird. Now, she went on to explain that there's a lot of overlap within the conspiracy world. You heard some of that. And that it's even actually increased over the years. She cited the Facebook post that she saw saying, quote, Globers equal Antifa. Somehow Antifa, yes, Antifa became synonymous with believing that the world is round to them. Wait. I mean, yes, I guess they're correct. I mean, by the way, Antifa is not an organization. It's basically just an ideology. It's a philosophy. You're anti-fascist, right? I would wager that the majority of people who believe that, yes, we are anti-fascist, we do not like fascism, also do not think that the world is flat. Weird. But anyway, okay. So now she went on to note that even though there's overlap, the QAnons overall are dismissing the flat earthers. I've got another little snippet here of that interview. Take a look.
I was at a convention in 2019 and there were two women going around handing out QAnon jewelry. And I'm like, yo, are you flat earthers? And they're like, not really, but we just want to spread the word about QAnon. And we thought this would be a receptive community. That said, you asked about flat earthers putting people off. And yeah, that happens too. And like Q himself has done a Q&A, where somebody asked him, they said, just to shut the flat earthers up, is Earth round? And Q says, yeah, of course it's round. We're not like those conspiracy nutters. But again, there was dissent in the comments.
Let them fight. I mean, look, we're not like those conspiracy nutters. I mean, those guys are crazy. I mean, we're QAnon, but those flat earther people, you better watch out for them. Now, the most interesting thing here that you learn about conspiracy theories is that, look, the people who believe them are essentially the same kind of people. They're the ones who think they got it all figured out. That, no, we know all the answers. Of course. And really, we know all the answers, and it is you that are the crazy ones. You are the sheep. We're the only ones that are smart enough to figure out what's actually going on. You see, yeah, we got it all figured out. And by the way, flat Earth. I mean, the real and obviously the other thing that they have in common is it always comes down to weirdo anti-Semitism. It's so strange, but basically, what it boils down to is, well, obviously this very outlandish thing is true, and it's proof that the government lies to you. And if they lied to you about the shape of the earth, well, then what else would they lie to you about? Everything, right? Now, in reality, of course, most people figure it out already, and it's not hard to figure that out, that the government does lie to us. Yeah, of course, they lie about things all the time. It doesn't have to be elaborate conspiracies. We know, of course, for example, thanks to Edward Snowden, that the government has been taking in and basically sucking up all of our metadata on the internet. And in the phone calls as well. They've listened into, for example, our troops over in Iraq having phone sex, weirdly enough. But not weirdly enough, because it's kind of human nature. And so, yes, the government has lied about that. They do spy in on American citizens. I know, it's all about fighting terror, right? Sure. How many terrorist attacks have that stopped? Not many, if at all. But again, it doesn't have to be a conspiracy theory because we know it's true. And of course, when you look at the reasons, usually it's, of course, trying to hide and protect their image, hide embarrassing things that they may have done, or, engage in personal corruption. Very, very simple things. And it doesn't have to involve flat earths or aliens or anything like that. And so it's not hard. You don't need to completely look outside of the bounds of reality and say, oh, it's the Satanists that have come in. It is the devils and the demons, or like, you don't even have to go that far. Because some of the conspiracy theories that I've talked about here are floated by Mike Lindell. It's the Chinese, the Iranians, the Pomeranians. They're all coming together with the Italians, and they're hacking the election somehow. No, you don't have to believe that, because there's some proof of that. It's insane. Insane. I mean, when you even look at some of the details, when you think about it for just a minute, you're like, yeah, no, that doesn't make any sense. But see, here's the thing. When you're in one of this conspiracy mindsets, right, you end up pushing out all facts, logic, and reason. And you know what happens when you do that? You become a cultist. And that's unhealthy. That's dangerous. I've read a lot of stories about people, losing family members to groups like QAnon, and either, them getting cut off by their family or them cutting their family off because they become obsessed. The conspiracy becomes their personality and sometimes even leads to deadly results. Again, we've had groups like Marshall Applewhite's Heaven's Gate that, you know, if you're familiar what happened, you know, that was a mass suicide that happened in this cult because they thought, oh, the aliens are going to come by, and so if we do this, if we drink the Kool-Aid or whatever, so many weird things about that cult. You know, then the aliens are going to suck us up, and then we're going to go off to a better planet. It's so weird. There's some really weird stuff here. It's very strange conspiracy theories. And again, some of them quite deadly. Their lives get absolutely devoured, and they're driven deeper and deeper into it. And I really do think that now, I mean, we've always had conspiracy theories. They've always existed, and they've always proliferated. In fact, I believe it was Heaven's Gate was like 1990s, right? But I think the internet has actually made things worse. The internet and, of course, social media and conservative media has really amplified the spread of some of this insanity. And, you know, a lot of the newer conspiracy theories that we're seeing, that we talk about, come from the fever swamps of the internet. The forums, the 4chans, the 8chans, the 1632 chans, they come from those different places. They come from, the so-called intellectual dark web. They go and get filtered through places like InfoWars, Alex Jones, Gateway Pundit, and then, of course, get amplified by Fox News, sometimes Newsmax, OAN. And so you look at that, and that's really the same process for a similar type of pathology. So when you look at this, overall, it's both sad and also kind of funny when the different conspiracy fandoms fight each other, because at the end of the day, everybody else knows that you're both nuts. All right. Let's move on. Speaking of media, all right. When you think about powerhouses of right-wing media, you might think about Fox News. And while that's true for cable television, there's another conservative outlet that's actually wielding some massive power on social media, and you might not have even heard of it. It's actually called Conservative Brief. Now, Conservative Brief is a very small company that has a total of 3 employees. Now, that's important because I'm going to give you information. I'm going to tell you just how much reach they actually have on Facebook, and how and why. So now this actually comes from reporting from Judd Legum, who wanted to find out why specific conservative pages are dominating on Facebook despite their cries of being censored and suppressed. And we've all heard that before. There isn't a day that goes by where some conservative pundit out there says, I can't believe Facebook is censoring us. It's censorship, it's oppression. They're coming after conservative voices. They're silencing conservative voices. Now, Legum writes, most people have probably never heard of the website Conservative Brief. It employs just 3 writers and does not produce any original reporting. Nearly all of its articles are aggregations of tweets, YouTube videos, or other media websites presented with a far-right spin. Recent headlines include, more damning evidence surfaces against Hillary Clinton in Durham probe, and Trump gives love to Mike Lindell. We're getting a little spicy there, aren't we?
There's some whores in this house.
Okay, no, I'm kidding. The full title is Trump gives love to Mike Lindell, showers him with praise for the good that he's done. I'm sorry. I'm a child, so, okay, anyway. Now, Conservative Brief has been cited repeatedly for publishing false claims. And yet, they have emerged in 2022 as the dominant force on Facebook, and actually has become more popular than not only Ben Shapiro's outlet, Daily Wire, but also more popular than the New York Times and Washington Post. So let me stop there. If you're watching, conservatives will be like, well, of course they're dominating because, you know, we're correct. And that the Washington Post and New York Times, they're fake news. They're fake news. And you're just jealous. Well, let me just say, I'm not a huge fan of the Washington Post or the New York Times. Both are very establishment, anti-progressive, pro-corporate. They, yes, do occasionally do some good pieces of actual journalism, and I give them the credit for that, and I like when they do that. I wish they did more. But once again, most of their reporting, I should say the vast majority, is essentially framed from the angle of being pro-business, pro-defense contractor, and pro-insider politics. A lot of their scoops are basically just industry insiders giving them tips or leaking information. A lot of it ends up being stenography for the defense contractors. But that said, for the most part, they remain in facts. Deeply immersed in factual information. Not always, as I pointed out, but generally they try to stay within the realm of reality. A lot of the conservative sites do not. The Durham probe, for example, didn't say anything about Hillary Clinton infiltrating the White House servers. It didn't have anything to do with that. But that's a claim that's echoed by the far right. Now, Legum, he looked at the engagement for Conservative Brief, and he found that their engagement on Facebook had exploded over the last year. So he cites an analysis from social media and analytics site NewsWhip. In February 2021, Conservative Brief attracted about 2,500 engagements, a combination of likes, reactions, comments, and shares per article. 2,500. Today, each article posted by Conservative Brief attracts well over 30,000 engagements. Now, they do this without even having a Facebook page of their own. Now, the Washington Post has 6.6 million followers on Facebook, and the New York Times Facebook page has 17 million. And yet, Conservative Brief blows them out of the water. They are able to attract way more engagement overall. And so when you look at this, as people do, you wonder, wait a minute, what's going on here? Something seems very, very fishy, very strange. So now, how does this happen? Now, as I said, the Conservative Brief is a small website. So now, each time the Conservative Brief publishes an article, a link to the article ends up being reposted to a network of conservative Facebook pages with incredibly large audiences. So its content is essentially being promoted massively by others, by gigantic Facebook pages. So let me see if I have that. I do not. Or at least I didn't put that graphic in there. We're doing it live, folks. This will be removed with the magic of editing. So that right there, I mean, look, you can see it's the same Lindell article reposted with pretty much the same exact wording, all from the same website, all over Facebook. Now that's very strange. Now that same article included a coupon code to purchase slippers from Mike Pillow at a 50% discount. The same day this article was published to a slew of large conservative Facebook pages, sometimes with the identical text, said the report. These same Facebook pages post links to articles from Conservative Brief, often multiple times per day. D'Souza's Facebook page, for example, posted a dozen links to Conservative Brief just on Tuesday. Why? Well, before we get into the why, here's even more information about how it actually works. So, Each time these pages share content from Conservative Brief, they append something called a UTM code. And now a UTM code is a way for publishers to know precisely how much traffic comes from a particular source. Now, it's not automatically added. You've got to insert it into the link. And so now, but once you do, by appending that code, D'Souza is basically, and that's one of the examples of these Facebook pages, Dinesh D'Souza's page. Basically, it allows Conservative Brief to see how much traffic each one of these pages brings to their site. Now, the pages themselves do not have access to this information. Only Conservative Brief has access to that information provided by this code. So now, how does that help these pages? Like Dinesh D'Souza, for example. Well, think about it. The site has no original content. It just amplifies other conservative content. And so the thinking is, well, somebody's getting money for it. There's money changing hands. Somebody's getting paid, of course. And it's really the only thing that makes sense. The right wing has billionaires with very, very deep pockets and a very cohesive, effective media strategy. Unlike the left, they do have the money and they also cross-collaborate a lot. And so now I always wondered, like, wait a minute, there's so many different right-wing outlets here. There's so many different pages. How are they so effective at being able to cross-pollinate each other? They must be, working together and very cohesive, very tight-knit, right? No, it turns out they're all basically paid. And this is just a gigantic media propaganda op. I mean, they're not in competition like many of the content creators on the left feel that they are. These people are all working for the same deep-pocketed organizations and people for the same goals. And that goal, of course, is generally anything that helps the corporations, the corporate donors. Tax cuts for the rich, deregulation for corporations, billionaires. They're able to save a lot of money. The rich get richer. And they do so by, of course, distracting the people with bullshit culture war issues and fake news. Or at least, of course, having very misleading spins on the news. And Facebook, unfortunately, allows them to get away with it because at the end of the day, they're a giant corporation and they benefit from conservative rule. They're definitely afraid of being called liberal. And, especially when, of course, you have every conservative screaming about how they are censoring and canceling conservative voices. That, of course, is absolutely not true at all. Ben Shapiro's Daily Wire, for example, has some of the top content on Facebook every day. And now it used to be more, but it turns out Daily Wire was also caught doing this very same thing, paying another company, Mad World News, to spread traffic, their articles and their videos and things like that, their content all around that network and all their affiliated pages. Now, when they were caught, Facebook actually gave Daily Wire a warning, but punished Mad World News. They demoted them so their reach is not as far. Now, they were given this warning and punished because it's actually against the Facebook's own rules that state that Facebook pages cannot accept anything of value to post content that does not feature themselves or that they were not involved and created. So now they don't do that anymore, allegedly. But there is a link between Mad World News and Conservative Brief. Turns out, one of the writers who worked at Mad World News is now the editor-at-large for Conservative Brief. That's weird. It must be a coincidence, right? Who knows? Now, look, that's the link. Yes, they're getting paid to spread this this conservative outlet that's nothing more than an aggregator, these pages, and it is backed by big money. Now, Facebook has been warned about this. Legum warned them last year and said, hey, look, you need to check out this site. This is weird. I'm noticing a very strange pattern. Facebook says, oh, we'll get on it. We'll look into it. And what's happened since? Nothing. Nothing. Oh, we're still looking into it, guys. We haven't figured it out yet. It's very, very obvious. Look, now, I was going to ask, like, oh, what, you know, like, are they going to crack down on this? I don't think so. I think it's very unlikely unless there's a lot of attention and a lot of outrage. Maybe the company can be shamed into doing something, especially since they're now on this PR tour trying to say, oh no, Facebook, Meta, I'm sorry, Meta is good. No, Meta's not pushing right-wing disinformation. What are you talking about? No, we're a great company. In fact, we deprioritized our newsfeed. Well, this site, Conservative Brief, seems to have bucked that trend and seems to have beaten your attempts to deprioritize news because it is everywhere sharing the same type of conservative propaganda that Daily Wire had gotten in trouble for paying another site to spread. So, no, there is something going on, and they have to be called out for it. There has to be outrage here. And I don't even know if that'll do it. But what I do know is if nobody says anything, nobody does anything, well, then they're not going to fix it because they'll just keep allowing them to get away with it. And that's not right. It's an uneven playing field, you know, when you can just buy your way to the top, buy yourself some fake reach. And by the way, this shows another thing, right? That it's not the conservative ideas and ideals and policy positions that are popular, and that's why they're so big. Once again, it proves that this is just more astroturfing from wealthy billionaires. All right. Establishment Democrats are now searching for a replacement to Donald Trump in order to avoid what is likely to be a very bad midterm. Now, Axios is reporting that searching for a strategy to avoid a 2022 midterm disaster, advisors to President Biden have discussed elevating a unifying Republican foil not named Donald Trump. They say that Team Biden's muscle memory is to elevate and focus on the best foil Democrats have been gifted, Trump. Biden advisor and Hill allies told Axios voters are more likely to side with the president if he's compared to an alternative. Before I go on, I just want to note that already I want to scream. Yikes. Understand that Democrats, and the reason that they're doing this is because they have nothing to run on, no accomplishments. But Trump does not have the same effect that it had during the 2020 election, for example. I mean, we can, of course, look at the elections in Virginia, where Glenn Youngkin had won, running on some very right-wing things. And, of course, you had his opponent that was like, oh, yeah, no, you're right. You're right about the whole school thing. Yeah, we should definitely not have critical race theory in school. And so we have more parent choice. And so that's just an example of how the Democrats haven't really had any position, anything to stand on against the Republicans, who are coming back very, very strong. And that's unfortunate. So now they're doing the exact same thing, or planning to, that they did with Donald Trump, and are just going to look for someone else. My question is, why not just do things and run on the things? I mean, very, very simple, right? I mean, just do things, pass things, and then run on passing the things. But apparently they're not going in that direction. Now, they write that as Terry McAuliffe's loss in Virginia showed last fall, running against an out-of-office Trump will not cut it with the voters. Biden advisors know they need to bring Republicans back into the fray and interrupt the ceaseless news cycles about Democratic infighting. They want to avoid inside baseball stories about the president as a legislative tactician dealing with recalcitrant moderate senators. One idea they had was to run against Ron DeSantis. Yes, what about Ron DeSantis? He's a pretty terrible person, Trump mini-me, really, messing with people in Florida. Well, apparently Biden advisors are reluctant to conduct midterm races on DeSantis' signature issue, which would be COVID-19. Because they say that the Biden administration's approaches on vaccine and mask mandates may be a political liability with some swing voters. So what about finding another Republican? Well, they looked at Kevin McCarthy. However, Biden confidants worry that House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy is not well known enough. No, we needed somebody who has more name recognition like Trump. And that also noted, what about running on Mitch McConnell? Mitch McConnell, everybody knows who Mitch McConnell is. Mitch McConnell, not a very popular guy, but oh no, Biden, they write, will not demonize Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell because of their long-standing and collegial relationship. Now, Mitch McConnell, understand that Mitch McConnell is more evil than Donald Trump could ever be. Behind every horrible conservative policy is Mitch McConnell. Mitch McConnell has done way more to empower the right wing and to destroy democracy than Donald Trump has. And you look, he was one of the guys who was behind Citizens United in a way to try to boost corporate, the corporate takeover of our government. But no, Biden will not go after Mitch McConnell because they have a good relationship. It gets worse though. So now, when asked, they talk about, okay, why don't we just run on our achievements, right? Why don't we run on governing and then actually try to govern? You know, the thing that they were elected to do. Well, their reason is, we don't really know how to govern. We're not really good at governing, and so we have to elevate a Trump. In fact, here's Celinda Lake, who polled for Biden during the 2020 campaign and works with the DNC. Quote, one of the problems is our messaging has been driven by governing, not by campaigning, and we need to move into campaign mode. If you're trying to negotiate on the Hill, it's hard to draw a contrast. If you're trying to win the November 2022 elections, you must draw a contrast. Lake, like others Axios interviewed, said Democrats won't get far by raising only one individual foil, not even a figure as polarizing as Trump. She advocates drawing a broader contrast with the MAGA faction, including Republicans who supported the January 6th and now want to pardon the January 6th rioters. Quote, that's a much better foil than just talking about picking one obscure congressional leader that nobody will know anyway, or a future presidential nominee that nobody will know anyway. Trump is not on the ballot, and these MAGA faction candidates are. Or what you could do, of course, is you could pass something. You could just pass something, anything, something to help the American people. You know, you could cancel student loan debt. You could cancel that without the help of Congress today. Today, you could legalize marijuana at the federal level. He could renew and push for Build Back Better. He could do something. For example, he could bring back the $3.5 trillion bill that was filled with very popular policy positions, like, for example, expanding Medicare, paid leave, child tax credits. But will he? No, of course not. Biden, understand what Joe Biden is. He is an institutionalist. And the only promise that he has ever actually delivered on is the one that he made to his donors. Nothing will fundamentally change. So, all right. Let's move on. But what about Havana syndrome? Oh my God. Don't get me started on that. So let's go to something very serious here. A protest against police violence in Portland turned deadly over the weekend after an armed man shot and killed a 60-year-old BLM activist. So now, look, June Knightley was fatally shot on a Saturday night while volunteering to direct traffic during a protest against police violence. That's when a armed homeowner, allegedly, confronted her small group and opened fire on the crowd. A witness claimed the man immediately fired at these volunteers. Knightley was killed and 5 others were injured. That shooter has been identified by Oregon Live as Benjamin Jeffrey Smith, a 43-year-old machinist who has lived in Portland for about 14 years in the area. As journalist Sergio Olmos wrote on Twitter, a victim says a man approached her and a few other women and screamed that they were terrorists responsible for violence in the city. Again, they were unarmed. They didn't have any, they weren't actually doing anything other than trying to direct traffic. And then he had yelled a misogynistic slur at them and said, "If I see you come past my house, I will shoot you." And of course, he then shot them. Now, there's stuff about Smith that has come out about how he's been influenced by right-wing media as well as right-wing reporter Andy Ngo, a very big follower of Andy Ngo. Smith's brother told the newspaper that he, as Oregon Live put it, had grown increasingly angry at demonstrations he set in the Northeast Portland neighborhood. He was upset about citywide protests, homeless people in the area, and the COVID-19 health mandates, and was known to collect guns. According to Oregon Live, Smith shot into the crowd and one of the demonstrators had returned fire. The local KPTV, that was, by the way, I have to note that the 5 that were shot, right, they were the ones that were unarmed. There was another person nearby who did return fire. Now, the local KPTV reported that the protest at Portland's Normandale Park was organized in solidarity with Amir Locke, a 22-year-old man who was shot and killed as police executed a no-knock warrant on February 2nd in Minneapolis. One of the victims, Knightley, was part of a group of women who were volunteering as part of the motorcade group working on traffic and logistics ahead of the protest, which was planned for the Northeast Portland Park. Kathleen Sodett described Knightley to Oregon Live, saying, "She was a warm, kind, and giving and kind person who spent time trying to think of things that she could do to make the world better and to make herself better in the world." Whereas you're going to see Smith is the opposite. Apparently, there are violent and anti-Semitic social media posts that have been linked to him under the name of Polybun. So now understand that, like, sometimes social media, you have to be very careful when you look at the social media of people because you might get the wrong person. But based on what I have seen from this Polybun, right, it seems to be the same kind of person. So now, some of Polybun's posts included cheering a man on who had murdered his neighbors over a small property dispute, supporting Kyle Rittenhouse. And by the way, there was that warning that hey, if Kyle Rittenhouse is let go, because he did go into that protest, and he ended up shooting 2 people, that this was going to lead to more people bringing guns to protests. And so what happened? You had somebody that brought a gun to a protest and then shot 5 people, killed 1. So now, he also had some wildly anti-Semitic posts talking about the Jewish question. Also, according to chat logs, he had openly talked about bringing guns to different places, including a furry convention. Now, he's a furry. Not that actually matters. I don't really care what you do or what you dress up as. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't mean you're violent. In fact, a lot of the furry community has distanced themselves and had outed Polybun. And so they denounced this guy, but he had also talked about openly shooting communists and Antifa. And according to his roommate, he had been radicalized for several years, at least since the Obama administration. In fact, his roommate, Christine Christensen, told OPB that Smith let her stay with him for free initially, saying that when I first moved in, he seemed fine. Wasn't that bad of a guy. She then said that he became more radicalized over the years, especially during the administration of Donald Trump, and had heard him yelling racial slurs in his room and deriding women. As the years went on, he had just gotten more and more radicalized. He got angrier and angrier. He said, I have not been comfortable living with him for a while. I did not feel safe with him, especially this last 2 years with the whole COVID thing. I think that made him even more angry. And of course, he had had a switch in his political identity, going from F the police to Blue Lives Matter just within a year, and she described him as a very fly off the handle kind of guy who made her uncomfortable. Now, what is the underlying, I think, motivation, or and not really motivation, but like what fed into this radicalization that eventually led to him being motivated to do violence against Black Lives Matter protesters? Right-wing media. It's the thing that underlines all of these attacks. The guy was a huge fan of Andy Ngo. Andy Ngo claims to be a journalist covering Antifa and the so-called violent leftist mobs, but in reality, he's been using his social media to push biased opinions along with selectively edited videos to work people up in order for some of them, or at least it leads to some of these people, to go and take their anger out, arm themselves, and take their anger out on Antifa or BLM protesters. Many right-wingers end up doing this violence against protesters. One Portland activist who tracks Ngo said this: Ngo signals this is a person that should be targeted and should be harassed and should be threatened. Andy puts a target on them, and that results in the person being doxxed. And Andy is giving people explicit permission to unleash hatred and violence on people and absolutely knows what he is doing. End quote. Now, for his efforts, of course, Andy Ngo has been physically assaulted himself. I don't agree with that. I don't agree with anybody being physically assaulted. Don't do that. It's wrong. And what it does is it actually fires up the far right even more against protesters. In fact, Fox News then uses that and gets to paint all protesters as violent Antifa and terrorists and people burning down entire buildings or cities. How much have we heard that? And then, of course, it also gives outlets like the establishment media, CNN, to come out and say the same thing. Brian Stelter, oh, I can't believe these violent Antifas would attack this journalist and Andy Ngo. So now if you think, wait, hold on, these people were just here peacefully protesting. They weren't involved in the violence. They're not Antifa. Antifa isn't a thing. It's not a real group. But see, here's the thing. It doesn't matter to the far right. The far right runs off hatred, fear, and grievance politics, anger, and of course, victimization. The feeling that, they're being victimized by people who are fighting for civil rights. And they also enjoy intimidation. Their violent rhetoric leads to situations where some people, like Smith, who are already seemingly deeply troubled, end up being compelled to do violence against other people. This is what we call stochastic terrorism. Now, the police, however, are also in some hot water. In fact, the Portland police say that, oh, no, where's an investigation? And our investigation indicates this incident started with a confrontation between an armed homeowner and armed protester. Now, originally, they refused to release the name of the person who had shot who had done this mass shooting. Now, here's what they said. The scene was extremely chaotic, and a number of witnesses were uncooperative with the responding officers. Most people on the scene left without even talking to police. Why would you? I mean, if you're there to, do a protest against the police, why would you want to talk to police? Now, they also said, this is a very complicated incident, and investigators are trying to put this puzzle together without having all the pieces. And not only that, but you had Portland Police Lieutenant Nathan Shepard telling the Daily Beast, quote, unfortunately, not all cases are simple. In some, a determination has to be made of who is a suspect and who is a victim. Releasing names prematurely before all the facts are known could have catastrophic effects on the investigation and any person who might eventually be considered a victim and their family. Now, police in Portland have also been accused of favoring right-wing protesters and targeting BLM and peaceful protesters. And so now look, the names are out. Obviously, Ben had some real issues, especially with BLM protesters in general. And from what I can see, started a confrontation that led to the death of a 60-year-old disabled queer anti-racist activist who was just peaceably assembling to protest police brutality. This is what happens, unfortunately, when violent narratives from the far right about Antifa and BLM being terrorists continues to go unchallenged. Okay. Whew. So that's a horrible story. Let's go to some super chats here before we get going. Let's see. Let's open that up. We're doing it live, folks. Doing it live. All right. Let's see. Salmon Dragon, hopefully I said that right, says nothing, but thank you for the very kind $10. Really, really appreciate it. Dango Bango says, Biden is anti-trans. He's not doing anything about Greg Abbott's genocidal law aimed directly at trans kids and ally parents and doctors. I'm going to talk about that tomorrow because that's a horrible story. So I'm going to share the details of what they're trying to do in Texas. And it's not good. And it's not good at all. So thank you for sharing that. Dango Bango, appreciate that. We'll have more details on that tomorrow. By the way, tomorrow, fun news, I'll be co-hosting the Damage Report with John Adirola. So, tune in 1 to 2:30 p.m. That's tomorrow on the TYT channel. So that's on the Damage Report YouTube and on TYT's Twitch channel and all the various different places where you can find that programming live. So I'm really looking forward to that. That should be a lot of fun. Dango Bango also says the lack of action from Biden in regards to Florida's Don't Say Gay bill. Oh, there it goes. Get it. I got to get it back. Don't Say Gay bill speaks volumes that Biden doesn't care about the gay community. He's just too cowardly to stand up to the Republicans. And again, what makes it really, really sad is that you have this knee-jerk reaction by these establishment politicians, right? Establishment Democrats to say, oh, sorry, we can't defend trans people because we got to defend school choice, because we got beaten in Virginia. They're taking the Virginia loss completely wrong. They're saying we didn't go right-wing enough. We didn't go right-wing enough. We didn't, we didn't bow to their narrative. We didn't bow to their narrative enough. I think it's incredibly cowardly on the part of Democratic politicians, and I don't think they care either. I don't necessarily know if he's one of them, but they don't care, and I think that's the major thing, because that actually makes it worse. They don't care, and they'd rather pander to the far right than actually protect people who are LGBTQ. All right. So anyway, Doomslayer 69 chuds think that Dr. Seuss, M&M's, and she's Christian, Muslim, Black America, the LGBT community, and leftists are attacking them, as all chuds do, is attack those groups. It's gaslighting. Yep, that's a good point. Okay. Anyway, thank you all. I got to get going. I got to get some stuff. I got to get the show edited. But we'll see you here tomorrow. Same time, same place. And of course, don't miss me on the damage report tomorrow. Should be a lot of fun. All right, everybody, let's raid. We are going to go into the serfs. Haven't had a serfs raid. Lance is currently talking about what it looks like the Texas anti-trans legislation attack on transgender youth specifically. So everybody go, stay with us when we raid into them on Twitch. And everybody else, thank you. Love you all. And remember, change begins with you. Good night, nation. See you later.
Big, massive dumps.
How you like that, boy?
Up my knee. They want to make you drink Starbucks every day from now until forever.
Obama.
You're kicking me out the door. You're kicking me out the door.